Protesters gathered to send Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan a strong message this evening, and they chose to take a stand in front of her house. KIRO 7's Shelby Miller is live at Magnuson Park, where the march began this evening. Shelby.
And there were hundreds of people who gathered here for that march. It all started with a rally that was held here at the park, and then people headed down the street here. They walked to a neighborhood and they stopped by one house they say belongs to the mayor herself. Through chants, signs, and speeches, protesters made it clear they're demanding to see a difference in Seattle. They don't think Mayor Jenny Durkan has done enough.
There's been a huge demand in Seattle black and brown communities for decades now. Defunding SPD 50% is just the beginning of that, but there needs to be a lot of progress and restorative justice for our black and brown folks.
Hundreds gathered at Magnuson Park Sunday evening for an event they called March to the Mayor's Mansion. They stopped in the middle of a neighborhood to hold a rally equipped with a stage. Speakers laid out their demands. They want to defund the Seattle Police Department by at least 50%. They also want charges against protesters to be dropped. We were there as protesters made their way deeper into the neighborhood, stopping in front of a home they say is Mayor Durkan's. We're not showing her home at the request of the mayor's office due to a security concern. But that's where Councilmember Kshama Sawant took the mic and added one more request that got cheers from the crowd.
And last but not least, Mayor Jenny Durkan must go. I, as an elected representative of Seattle's working people, have pledged to bring articles of impeachment.
And protesters I spoke to today say those demands that they have need to be met quickly. Meanwhile, when this was all starting, Mayor Jenny Durkan sent out a series of tweets, and she was defending herself, saying that she's had a dozen meetings with organizations, black leaders, and protesters. And then further down, she did say, though, that she needs to do more, and that is her job to listen and to act. Reporting live in Seattle, Shelby Miller, KIRO 7 News.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Meanwhile, Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best told CNN today it is now time to finally break up the Capitol Hill occupied protest zone so that officers can get back into the East Precinct.
This is no longer a block party. It's a real public safety issue. So we are absolutely looking to get back into that precinct. We recognize that at some point there's going to be, a reckoning for how we can get this resolved.
Chief Best says the department is now working with protesters, but she added she's determined to end the standoff ASAP. Up on Capitol Hill tonight, though, the occupied protest zone remains largely intact. As KIRO 7's Deborah Horn reports, this comes after what appeared to be assurances from the Seattle mayor's office that the barricades would be moved by today.
Certainly, while we were there, we saw no city crews ready to move the people at CHOP. And in fact, the people there told us they had no expectation that anyone would show up today to move them out. By all appearances, things were quiet on this Sunday at the Capitol Hill occupied protest zone. But make no mistake, the protesters who remain inside CHOP are still defiant.
They made a mistake. They can't play takesy-backsies.
Longtime activist Mohawk Kuzma says they regard the East Precinct as an abandoned building, so they are essentially squatting, and they don't expect Seattle police to return.
So basically, the mayor hasn't cleared us out because she used to be a former DOJ employee, and basically she's engaged in interrogation tactics, of scare tactics. So you're going to try to scare us out and get out of here? We're not going to move until our demands are met.
SDOT crews were prevented from clearing out the barricades Friday. One protester lay in the middle of the street, others sat on the barricades. Later, Mayor Jenny Durkan held a closed-door meeting with CHOP protesters. Which barricades are going to be moved based on what you understand?
Well, the mayor's office wants to move everything except for the ones that are directly outside of the East Precinct.
Citizen journalist Omari Salisbury was the only reporter allowed inside. These are his photographs for Converge Media. He says the mayor said then only some of the barricades would be moved Sunday, but then last night that timeline changed after some city staffers met face-to-face with those living there. Still, there appears to be no consensus.
4 or 5 days ago, the people here at the CHOP, I mean, they said it live that they were giving up Cal Anderson, they were giving up the park, and they were putting all their efforts on the East Precinct.
He is guessing, and it is only a guess, that city crews will return tomorrow. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Deborah Horn, KIRO 7 News.
Now at 11, protesters show up at the home of Seattle's mayor. We'll find out what message they delivered. I'm Vanessa Mashanya. This is King 5 News. Another night of protests, but this time the protests happened right outside the home of Seattle's mayor. Demonstrators marched to Jenny Durkan's house this evening. King 5's Tony Black is live in Seattle with more on what the demonstrators had to say. Tony, good evening.
Good evening to you, Vanessa. Yeah, earlier there was a large crowd of people that were here at Magnuson Park, and we'll show you some video of that earlier today so you can get a look at the size of the crowd that was there. An organizer who you will hear from shortly says that this demonstration started at Magnuson, then was joined by another group that had been marching near UW. Councilmember Kshama Sawant was also here at this rally and spoke to the crowd, listing their demands and calling on Mayor Durkan to resign. Now, it is not clear when the decision was made or how it was made to make their way towards the mayor's home, but here's an organizer explaining the reason for doing so.
We came down to Jenny Durkan's mansion to bring the demands of the movement and of the families who have been impacted by police violence to her doorstep, as she seems to not be able to hear our demands any other way.
Now, Mayor Durkan's office gave us this statement, which I will read part of it to you now, saying, quote, Mayor Durkan and her family are in the state program to keep their address confidential because of the death threats mostly related to her work as Seattle's U.S. attorney under President Obama. Instead of working to make true change, Councilmember Sawant continues to choose political stunts. Tonight, she did so without the regard for the safety of the mayor and her family. The mayor was not even home. She was working at City Hall. Seattle can and should peacefully demonstrate, but should not put families and children at risk. And also in that statement, they mentioned that Mayor Durkan will continue to work with the leaders of the Black community. For now, here in Seattle, I'm Tony Black, King 5 News.
Tony, thank you. Well, this morning, barricades were supposed to be removed from the area known as the Capitol Hill Organized Protest, or the CHOP. But tonight, those barriers are still there. Here's King 5's Sebastian Robertson.
Good evening. Tomorrow marks 3 full weeks since protesters moved into what's called the CHOP. They've been successful in holding the ground and keeping SPD out. This morning, those barricades were supposed to be gone, but they're still there.
The crowds are dwindling. CHOP is in the movement that once drew thousands to the streets of Capitol Hill.
We are here to dismantle systemic racism.
But Sunday, the holdouts and cement barricades are a seemingly unmovable reminder that this story isn't over.
CHOP is an idea. You can take that idea around this country and then around this world because people want to hear you. It is an idea, and ideas can't be killed.
Anchored by the abandoned East Precinct, protesters have held 6 city blocks for nearly 3 weeks. A mostly peaceful protest that was at times marred by violence.
But the violence creates a different narrative, where then people who are in authority have to look at it differently.
3 shootings in 4 days brought a change in tone from Seattle's mayor and police chief. This after 2 people were wounded, a teenager shot and killed.
It's time for people to go home.
The city tried to pull down barricades Friday morning, but protesters, this person, stopped crews from moving in.
She said she's going to, on Sunday morning, remove all barricades except for the ones that outline the footprint of the East Precinct.
Sunday morning came and went. The barricades are still standing. The protesters holding strong to their demands, calling for a 50% defunding of police. They want that money redirected to social services and want all protesters released from jail. Many neighbors feel they're caught in the middle.
It seems like we're supposed to sacrifice our peace of mind, our safety for this movement, and I don't think that's fair to ask of us.
And we have reached out today to the city to see if there's any updated plans on what happens to the CHOP next. We have yet to hear back. We also know that the police chief said she'd be moving officers back into the East Precinct. Again, no timeline on that either. In Seattle, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
In Bellevue today, people gathered at the Prayer for Justice rally. Organizers say this was a way for people to show their support for Black lives and use their voices to speak out against racial injustice.